Camp Iadasica was established on March 1st, 1963, when 78 acres were purchased for $14,000. Now, camp didn't just pop up. The effort to organize and establish a camp began in 1960, when a committee was formed to pave the way for the formation of Camp Iadasica. This four-man steering committee was appointed to contact the other auxiliary organizations and seek their participation. The LLL, LWML, and Walther League all appointed 3 members each to enlarge the steering committee. Iowa District East had big and diverse plans for the mission of Camp Iadasica, but not just for youth. The camp was also to accommodate families, congregations, schools, and college and university groups. Thanks to the support of people from across the district, Camp Iadasica came to life. People began using the camp and funding the $150,000 campaign to build the camp's recreational facilities, swimming pool, dining hall, offices, and roads. The camp pond was formed, cabins were built, and shower facilities were added. In 1967, the main lodge was dedicated. Though camp had already been hosting events in groups for a few years, its first summer camp program began on June 6, 1965. The goal of providing Christ-centered education, recreation, and inspiration for youth and families across eastern Iowa had been met. As time went on, camp continued to grow. With the amphitheater being built in 1970, camp now had a unique outdoor, multi-purpose location for activities, teaching, and worship. Over time, homes were added to accommodate on-site camp directors and camp's busy year-round schedule. In 1974, the lodge was winterized and the fireside meeting room and dormitory rooms were added. The camp expanded in 1975 by 5 acres as land was added to the athletic field. With most of the notable development of the camp completed, it was now time to build the swimming pool. Until this time, campers had been swimming in the pond. In 1976, the pool was finished and ready for use. From 1972 to 1985, Camp Iadasica was home to 5 different directors. Camp's first full-time director, the Reverend Gerald Erdman, was hired in 1972. In 1976, Cliff and Peggy Schroeder were brought on as assistant directors. A year later, Walter Timm served as the camp's director until 1980, when Verlin Lefevre took over as camp director. In 1985, the camp was restructured to 1 full-time employee, and Paul Gulke was hired as Camp Iadasica's new director.
I think camps in my 20 years there really went through a phase of growth nationally in the 80s and 90s, and I think it was just a natural byproduct of the times. Camping became very important to people and getting that away from the daily routine. With Iadasica, the district, I think, was very helpful in saying, hey, here's a place we want our people to be attending as a central location, and developing that to their needs.
By the time camp's 25th anniversary rolled around in 1988, a campground area had been built near the current horse stables, and the basketball court had just been added. In 1989, the lodge expanded yet again when high comfort rooms were added, providing camp's guests with a more relaxing and enjoyable stay. From the mid-90s to 2000, camp's programs and attendance reached their peaks. The facilities to house the growing number of guests grew significantly. In 1994, the gazebo and platform village were added. Just a few years later, in 1996, the Living Memorial Youth Center, now called the Omega Lodge, was completed. Camp Idasika now had a second year-round retreat center. The camp also added 2 additional outdoor housing structures, thanks to Lutheran Church Missouri Synod servant events. The first was the Tree Village in 1999, and in 2000, the Raft Village was added. In 1997, Camp Idasika expanded its staff to 2 full-time employees. The position of program director was created and first occupied by Bob LaCroix.
Programmatically, we added a climbing face to the existing tower and made a climbing wall out of it. We added air riflery. We built the Raft Village and the Treehouse Village. And it seemed like the camper attendance just continued to grow and flourish during those years. It was a fun time.
In 2001, Kelly Dressler was hired as program director. On-site horse camp and day camp programs began and continue to this day. Camp Idasika's activities had expanded to include a climbing tower and high and low element challenge courses. Camp Idasika purchased an additional 10 acres in 2002 on the far east side of the camp with the intent of building a family campground. Over the course of a few years, Camp Idasika saw significant staffing changes. In 2004, Camp Idasika hired its first full-time site manager, Luke Fisher.
So started in 04, lots of facilities improvement happened here. Ultimately, that's what they hired me to do, have a full-time maintenance person to site director to make those improvements to facilities and grounds, landscaping, lots of that going on, trail improvement. The campground really kind of took the steps forward at that point when I came on full-time to add facilities and sites there.
In 2006, the Reverend Terry Small was hired as executive director. Later that year, Daniel Sanchez was hired as program director. By 2008, the new property on the east side of the camp had developed into a fully operational campground. But also in 2008, eastern Iowa experienced a devastating flood. To assist, Camp Idasika began hosting relief volunteers. For the next 5 years, Camp Idasika helped to rebuild the Cedar Rapids community through its annual Serving Our Neighbor Flood Relief Servant event and by hosting nearly 600 flood relief workers.
Our activities have grown quite a bit in my time here. We have some more recent ones. We have a new climbing tower and zip line. Now that's been a really nice feature, and not just a replacement for the old tower, but also an expansion. We have a few more climbing sites. We have the zip line for the kids there. We've added several activities thanks to many volunteers and other staff as well. We've added human foosball. The challenge course has been repaired, including that we've added a few elements there.
As Camp Idasika approaches its 50th anniversary, camp's facilities continue to be improved. The Building on the Foundations capital campaign was begun in 2010, with the goal of renovating, restoring, and replacing some of camp's most heavily used facilities. A new climbing wall with a zip line was built in 2012. In 2011, the Alpha Lodge began its transformation into a higher quality retreat and conference center. Today, Camp Idasika continues to be a safe place where young people learn the Word of God through its summer camp programs and seasonal retreats. In addition, thousands of people attend Camp Idasika annually for a variety of retreats, such as Christian gatherings, family reunions, outdoor education, conferences, and special events. Camp Idasika has a special place in the hearts of the many who have been blessed by it over the past 50 years. There have been many special moments in Camp Idasika's history, and you can be certain many more are to come. As a Lutheran camp, Camp Idasika continues to promote and provide Christ-centered education, recreation, and inspiration for individuals and groups of all ages, just as it always has, and just as it always will.